Hello and welcome back to Shadow Phoenix for another Ask 5D. And I finally realized why I was having such a hard time with my name. On YouTube, it's Shadow Phoenix Tarot. On Facebook, it's Shadow Phoenix Healing and Integration. So I'm going to shorten it to Shadow Phoenix and let you guys subscribe where you want and figure out the name. So, as promised, here's my coffee because we're just chit-chatting. I got my Pisces cup. As promised, we're going to talk about relationships. And this is going to be for any and every kind of relationship. Marriage, significant other, romantic, can be for friendships. It can be a relationship with like an agency. So maybe you have your employer, a religious institution, another group, a political party, a nonprofit. You may volunteer somewhere, and it could be with an individual in one of those venues, a boss, a co-worker, something like that, a subordinate. Could be, I know I've heard a lot of people talk about relationships with grown children and having some tension or difficulty with grown children and what that looks like for them. So this is any kind of relationship. And I want to say that this is can be very personal. Our society is built on close networks of family, friends, all the agencies in the world that keep things going, politics, workplaces, business and commerce, civic things. So it can really have far-reaching consequences. So I want you to take anything that I offer to you today and add that to your wisdom, to your experience, to other advice, professional or informal, that you're getting from other sources, and make sure that you're making responsible decisions for you based on what you feel you're ready to do, and because this can be very practical. So, if you have you may be considering divorce, you may be considering separating from a job, you may also be responsible for caring financially for a family or for yourself, which is not nothing. So be sure that you're taking what I'm saying into a group of, where you're getting your information from, and don't ever take advice or suggestions from only one source and just make a really narrow-minded, pointed decision based on really narrow, reference points. So that's my disclaimer. This is on you, people. This is entertainment purposes only. Having said that, I want to say that I draw a lot of my personal philosophy from a book that I read 5 to 7 years ago. It's old. I think it was published in 1991 or 92, called Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch. Everybody of my generation, which is Generation X, I'm sure has heard of this. Some younger generations may or may not be familiar with it. It was very popular for a time, and it was a man that I think you would commonly today say that he channeled. He did what I believe was like automatic writing. He had some questions, and he was having a dark night of the soul and had a big kerfuffle with the Lord, as it were, and was, talking shit to God, and then God answered back through automatic writing. He just felt inspired to sit down with a notebook and a pencil, I think, and he just wrote it out. He ended up publishing, I think, 3 books in the initial series, and then he since has gone on to be somebody in the New Age movement and has authored more things and done more things and all this different stuff. But in that book, Conversations with God by Neale Donald Walsch, he talks about every relationship not having any obligation in it. And of course, I'm condensing this a lot, and this was my takeaway at the time. This is something that since that time I have reviewed a lot and looked at how it applied in my life, or if it did apply in my life, and to what extent. And I really remember reading that and feeling this sense of freedom and this sense of lifting. I'm a trained sociologist. I have a bachelor's in sociology, and so social networking, social grouping, small groups to large macro level agencies is something that I've studied academically as well as been very interested in my whole entire life. And of course, we all are involved in every level, micro, macro, in interpersonal communications, interpersonal society, culture, things like that. So it's something that we all have a lot of lived experience in. And so when you have this kind of, again, political, national, family, local, religious, academic, relationships, there's a lot of shoulds. If you'll notice, almost any time you do anything, there's a contract written into that, especially like if your first day of work, when you bring your identification papers and your eligibility, I think work documents is what they call them. You'll bring that, and then you'll sign things, and they'll sign things. The person that's hiring you will sign things, and that's a contract. And all of that fine print and loads of, depending on your organization, that backpack worth of paper that you're taking home at the end of the day is denoting all of the contracts and agreements and the roles that people agree to play. Even such informal interactions such as shopping, retail shopping. The sun's coming up right now, so that's why I'm like super in the light here. I'm in the light. Even if you go to the grocery store, you're going to get a receipt. That is a contract. That is a bill of sale, technically in commerce, but that's a contract. That's stating terms, stipulation. There's an exchange of items, money for goods or money for services. Talks about like the refund, the rebate, the date. It's documenting things. So all of those things give us, in our the collective consciousness, a sense of obligation, which is not necessarily bad. I'm just pointing out that we tend to have this really deeply felt and carried sense of obligation when we go through the world with different agencies and things. In addition to that, we generally have family, which is our first society, and there's always rules and obligation and expectations and culture in your immediate family of origin, whatever your parental units look like, and any siblings that you might have had or not. All of those family units have rules and expectations, and you are taught and socialized how to perform this and how to be a good, whatever it is you are. Person, child, student, you're socialized, you're taught, and you're trained very intentionally on how to perform the expectations that are assigned to you. You're not choosing them, they're assigned to you. And then again, when we go out into the world, and if you have a religious institution or other voluntary things, you might say, that have very stringent code of ethics or code of behavior, orthodoxy, orthopraxy, again, you're going to be further assigned expectations and roles. And so we, in our lived 3D experience, feel very much obligated to perform and fulfill duties. If you're married, most people go through a wedding ceremony of some sort. It's a legal agreement. In addition to that, most couples have experiential or kind of like agreed upon things that in their relationship, this is what we do, this is what we don't do, this is our standard operating procedure about how we communicate and the expectations for each other. And then if you have a household together, that goes from emotional, relational things onto how we run a household and how we practice things. So I think you guys know where I'm going with this. And so with all of that expectation and obligation that we experience in relationship, reading this book where God or Neil Donald Walsh, the book is purporting, there's no obligation. Do what you need to do for you. And saying that with no judgment, a lot of times we really wrestle in our culture with being selfish and like, oh, that's selfish, that's selfishness, that's egocentric. And what was said in the book to me felt very self-centered, and it was very unapologetic, and it was very much prescribing that is how it should be. That we should be in relationships of any kind because it serves us, and when it ceases to serve us, we should feel free to go, and there should be no obligation. Neither should we seek to make an obligation or seek to make a contract. This is what I remember from the book I read 6 years ago. So when you read it, it may not say that verbatim in the book. This is my interpretation of that. And I have taken that, and again, it really resonated with me at the time. It still continues to resonate with me very strongly as I go through life, and as I continue to apply that kind of a sentiment to my relationships, it continues to resonate, and I'm fine-tuning it, you could say, to what does that look like, what does that feel like, so on and so forth. And So I would say the question, let me read the question. First of all, the question is, what can I do? This person is in a relationship with a specific other person that they're asking about. What can I do to improve this relationship? It's a troubled relationship right now, I think is how the person would term this scenario for themselves. And the second part B of that is, when do I know when to walk away? So I'm in a troubled relationship. How can I improve it? What can I do to improve it? And when do I know when it's time to walk away? And I feel like, again, like the first question that we talked about in 5D, oh, if anybody hasn't been there, I just flat out do not believe you. This is such a common, I mean, we are burdened in the 3D world with this question of how do I improve things? And when do I know when to walk away? When do I give myself permission to let this go? And we invest, we work so hard. And then when do I know when it's time to just cut it? Just cut it and walk away and say, this isn't going to get better. This isn't going to work for me. This isn't going to improve. I think that's very hard for us, because I think that because of all of the socialization, all of the different obligations that we feel internally and externally, we don't, I think that there's a sense that if I walk away from this person, I'm somehow saying that they're not worth it, or that they're not lovable, they're not worthwhile, they're not fixable. And this is by extension. And, I could be saying that this relationship isn't worth it. And sometimes that's hard for us. We feel like taking an action, like letting ourselves off the hook from a failing relationship, is really a condemnation or a judgment and a negative light on the other person. And my suggestion is that it is not. My suggestion is that that person defines for themselves their worth and their value, and that is the work of the individual to do. And anybody looking to others to validate or define them is basically asking for trouble, and they get what they're putting out, which is you're at the mercy of other people. If that's really something that an individual is like, I really need other people to affirm me and to value me, then again, as a sense of self-worth, not as a relationship, but as your own self-worth. And really, that's probably why the relationship is probably failing in a lot of ways, is because when we ask other people to do our own inner work, we're putting too much stress and expectation on the relationship, and it's not designed to do that, and it's going to fail. It's like putting a semi-truck on a kid's bridge or like a skateboard ramp. It's just not designed to handle that kind of load. And so sometimes we feel like by acknowledging the truth of saying that this isn't working and walking away, that we're saying something wrong. Again, I say that that's not true, that we're not saying something bad about the other person. When we choose to leave a relationship, it's about what it means for us, and that we can take ownership over our own experience, our own sense, and the experience of our own self-worth and value, and what we are willing to give and take, and what that equality in a relationship looks like for us, and that we're just making an educated decision about where we choose to invest ourselves, and it just is going to be elsewhere. Sometimes we feel really difficult about saying something like that. The message that I am worthwhile, I deserve to get in, to put in and to get out in equal amounts. I deserve to have a relationship where I'm honored, I'm cherished, I'm respected, I'm valued. Sometimes that can be hard for us. I think a lot of women have a difficult time for that. Socially, again, that's not something that we're taught. We're taught to be very Madonna-ish. We're taught to be very martyrs, where we're self-sacrificing, even to our own detriment. Sometimes, depending on, the energy flow that you're in and the thought stream that you're in, it could be to like literally any ends, that you're expected to do anything and everything that you possibly have access to and power to devote to whatever relationship this is. But men are not exempt from it. And so sometimes it's hard for us to say, wait a minute, I am going to put a boundary up. And that's what it's about. It's about boundary. It's about personal empowerment and assigning our own worth and not letting that come from our relationship to other people. As women, we tend to be very relationship oriented. This is a broad sweeping statement. I understand that. But generally, gender-wise, there tends to be in the feminine experience, and if you identify as feminine, I give you that. I'm not defining that for you. But if you identify as feminine, typically we tend to be more relationship-oriented, where a lot of times a masculine ego is going to be much more looking at like accomplishment and different kinds of rubrics for themselves. So women much more define themselves within the context of relationship versus as a standalone entity. So there's some, I don't know if you want to call that genetics or inbred or spiritual. I don't know where, that's a different conversation. But it can be difficult to separate out me as myself, as an individual, versus me in context to other people, taking that power, taking that worth, assigning yourself your own worth, and also rewriting the contract. A lot of times, especially as we grow, and I don't know why all of the big relationships that we get into tend to be while we're younger. I think society-wise we're getting like better about delaying big decisions until we're older and we have some life experience, but especially in generations gone by, you would pick a career, pick a college, pick a mate, and have kids all before you're 25 or 30 when you have the least amount of life experience, when you have the least amount of knowledge about yourself and the world and what you want, or life experience in general about what you can handle. And so if you continue to grow, as I hope that most people do, you're going to grow and change. And you may find that this contract I wrote with this person at X point in time, now because I've changed and developed or whatever else has changed in life, in the world around us, this no longer serves me in the same way, and I need to reevaluate that contract. And that can be difficult, and it can be difficult to take that power for yourself and say, I am going to rewrite this contract. I am going to rewrite it so that it works for me. And that's a big point of permission, and you have to really confront, in my experience, your own worthiness, your own sense of power, your sense of true entitlement and deservability about doing something like that. So that's some of the reasons why I see that it's so hard for us in the 3D to have this situation, to be in this situation, and some of the things that we go through when we're making a decision about, do I want to stay or go in a relationship? So foundationally, I've talked about kind of my personal format about relationships and that they should serve the individual, and they should both serve both individuals. So when I'm saying individual, I mean, of course, you, me, and our own experience, but that's for both people. So everything applies to everybody equally. And then also, I think that there is, when you take it from the 3D into the 5D, in a spiritual sense, that's a little bit of a misnomer to say you and me. Really, it is an us. Everything is an us because there's only one field. There's only one energy. It's God, it's love, it's whatever you call it. It's just the field, you could say, consciousness, whatever you define it as. And what happens is that when we have concentrated thought patterns and we have ego and then we have bodies, we knot up and we bunch. It's like a fabric and it bunches. It's still the same field. It's still the same item. It's the same material, but it's just bunched up. And so it looks as if there's two, but really it's made up of the same thing. And so we are always co-creating and we are always in relationship with everything else at the same time because it's us. There's no separation at very, very foundational level, very esoteric here. And so really there's only one, there's only a singularity. And so what I'm pointing out is that it looks like there's two people, but really they're part of this. Let's do it this way because this makes a little bit more sense visually. There's two people, but they're really part of the same hand. So even if like, hey, I'm going to go here and then this other person's going to go here, it looks like they're further away, but they're still connected. So they're still co-creating. Their individual vibrations are still creating, emerging, creating this third entity of us. And their vibrations are still overlapping and creating these wave patterns. And so it's really, from a spiritual point of view, it's not, am I going to separate? It's really, what are we creating together? What am I, as an individual, going to choose to create with this person from my own space? This other person's also saying from their own space, what am I choosing to create? When one person changes what they are contributing to the relationship, it changes the dynamic. Because if you have, let's say you have a very low vibration, here's a low vibration, and somebody starts vibrating faster, they're going to change. Somebody's going to have to come up or come down. Otherwise, the vibrations are going to be different, and somebody's going to have to come back and merge. Or again, if you still have these wave patterns, it's going to create a different direction. If you're here, your wave pattern is going to go out at this level. If you're up here, it goes out at this level. If you're mixed, then maybe it'll meld. it's a lot of science and geometry, and I know that. So, and I don't have fancy computer graphics, so bear with me with my little waving octopus paws here. But I think that you understand what I'm saying, which is when one person changes what they're putting out, it changes the dynamic between the two. By definition, you may not feel like it, you may not sense it. Sometimes we want something to come back to us very different. It may be subtle, but even if you're far apart, you're still going to be, you can be very close together, creating, co-creating together, very far apart, co-creating. So it's really about, what am I choosing to create? What do I want to create? And going from that. So if you are in relationship, let me think of how I want to explain this. If you're in a relationship and you have an ongoing daily exchange, and like you're, what people would say, like, we're in a relationship together. There's talking, there's communication, there's common activity, there's, you know, interacting on a very close level in time and space. And then, like, let's call it a breakup. Let's call it a split. Let's call it a split. So that can split for kids, romantic partners. We're splitting from employment. A split is a very general term because this can apply to anything. So now let's say we're going to split. So what you're creating here is, like, let's say this is me, and what's being created for me is disharmony, discord, whatever, and I don't like that, and you have to change yourself, and so I change, and now I'm going to create love, worthiness, and abundance. That person can choose to match your vibration and come up, or they can choose like this, and then if they don't choose to match you, you will naturally drift apart. What we typically do at this part in the 3D is freak out and then do clinging, and then we come back and we match, because it scares us, because again, being social animals, we want to stay in relationship, we want to stay in safety, and that's instinctual, that's biological for us, that's genetic for us. And so it can be very scary, especially if this is the first time or some of the first times that you have separated from somebody. If you're very enmeshed with somebody else, you feel like you're going to cease to exist in your ego and yourself when you separate from people. So this can be very difficult, and a lot of times we self-sabotage because we sense, I deserve love, I deserve worthiness, I deserve abundance, I need to be up here. And then when we're not followed, we feel like, oh, well, this must be wrong because now I'm losing relationships, so let me suck back in and come back down here. So a lot of times, and we can repeat this cycle over and over and over again. Sometimes I think people don't ever get it. That, you know, they may spend their whole 3D life trying to realize this manifestation of coming up here. So once you come up here, you're going to be manifesting for yourself truly love, worthiness, abundance. And if this person doesn't come up with you, you guys are both going to be in a different vibration. You will both be attracted to a different social group. So again, in the 3D, it's going to start to kind of go apart. But in the 5D, you're still vibrating together and you're creating something different. So when you are in the 5D vibrating up here, and this person's right here where you left them, if they chose not to go with you, now you're still going to be manifesting love, abundance, worthiness. You're just going to be doing it further apart from them. You still have you're still in relationship to them. And so there's still a point A, there's still a point B, and everything is always connected. Everything is always co-creating. You know, even at the most shallow junctions of meeting in the 3D world, let's say when I was 20, I was in traffic and this person cut me off and I yelled at them. That, you know, even though they went away and they're not in my conscious 3D lived experience, you know, they're still out there somewhere. Let's say they died. They're still in the field. They're still in 5D. So again, like we always think like very like 3D world, very limited, very much in this box based on what we see, touch, taste, smell, hear, you know, very, very limited only to this spectrum of what we catch vibrationally with our 5 senses. But what's really happening is much broader. And so when you're talking about law of attraction, you have to open up from this narrow, you know, the white light prism basically, and what we can hear, see, smell, touch, which is all vibration, to all of this which exists, but we can't feel in the same manner in the 3D world. And so we tend to say, well, this isn't real. Well, it's real. It's just not experienced in that way. That was kind of weird, but you got it or you didn't. Sorry. If you need more on that, we can talk about it. So when you are in separation and you're vibrating, you are going to now, because you're maintaining your vibration in 5D, in 3D what will happen is something else will come to meet you. Because you're here, and law of attraction says that you're going to always be drawing the same thing that you are, like unto like. You're going to be drawing that to you. You also be attracted to it. So now that you're up here with love, worthiness, and abundance, and you're vibrating at this level, you're going to be in that stream, that thought conscious stream. And again, other people have been there. Other people are coming to it. People are, discovering it and getting into it every time. So now you're going to meet up with those things. And if this person isn't there, you're going to have a felt experience in the 3D less and less from them. And the more that you elevate and you act and live out of and experience and materialize this reality, you'll be up here, and it's going to naturally, your felt experience will lessen. But you're still co-creating. So the idea of separation is really is a misnomer. Was a really long way to say a simple thing. I could have said that. But you got a really fun 20 minutes out of it. So again, when you're talking 3D, you are going to have a separation. You'll be fired, or you'll quit, or you'll get a divorce, or somebody moves across the country, or you resign from a position, or something like that. So in the 3D, there will be markers and, social things that occur to denote that the relationship has split, so to speak. But vibrationally, you're still relating to them and having an interaction with them. It just is from a different distance and from different vibrations. Neither vibration is better or worse. This is not about elevating or, putting down anybody, criticizing them. And this is really important because I think a lot of people think that in the recovery movement, they call it geographic cures. So geographic cure, well, I'll just move away, or I'll just get divorced. And so, yeah, maybe with that one individual person, you've, socially in the 3D world kind of severed from them and solved the problem. But if you're still vibrating here, you're just going to be attracting more of the same workplace, same partner, same financial situation. And so a lot of people have this repeat and they don't understand why, because they're like, well, I broke up with this guy. I broke up with this employer. I moved away from this bad situation. Why is it coming back again? Why is this always occurring for me? It's because you haven't done the work of changing your vibration. And so you're going to still attract what you are. So some people think, there's a whole cause and effect sequence that people think I can get rid of a situation and then I'll be better. You can if you then change your vibration, and then you will be at a mismatch with it, so you won't attract it anymore. Or you can just change your vibration and it'll naturally fall away. Either works. You can come at it, from a push-pull perspective. Either direction works as far as the cause or effect. But in my experience, you have to, at some level, make that vibrational change for this 3D change to be realized and a permanent for you. Okay, let me see here. Let's go back. I talked a lot about the split part, the process of splitting. Let's go back to how can I make a situation that I'm in better. In my last video, we talked about openness, and I really would suggest that too can be used in this scenario. And again, because this is such a complex relationship issue, and because it can be so, what's the definition of bad? Is somebody just saying hurtful words to you and not being considerate and polite and having proper etiquette? The spectrum from minor offenses all the way to outright abuse and outright neglect and attack and very vicious physical assault. So what I'm saying is in the terms of the minor things where there's respect and safety and there's actual trust established. If you find that you are in a situation where there's attack, that there's abuse, then that's a different conversation. Vibrationally, everything will still apply, but I'm never going to tell somebody who's in an abusive situation that they should stay and work on their vibration. You do need to take action depending on the severity of how bad the situation has developed, you need to take action on every level: legal, 3D, spiritual, financial, 5D. It's not a time for half measures or playing it, like cautious or just seeing how much works. If you're in a very, very severe situation, do everything you need to and that you have to get safe, to be safe, to stay safe, because safety and security is a foundational human right that everybody is entitled to, and you cannot grow if you are constantly under attack. And that's physically. You also are going to have a really hard time growing spiritually and emotionally if you are emotionally and spiritually under attack. So I'm going to be talking about the less severe infractions and relationships with manageable problems that can be improved. Somebody who is an outright abuser, we can't improve them enough. You can't improve yourself enough to improve somebody else. Sometimes what you have to do is go to a different level so that you're not on their wavelength anymore. And depending on the level of psycho in your counterpart, you could really need to do a lot of stuff. There's stalkers out there, there's narcissists out there, there's true people with mental health issues out there. And again, that's not to demean them, but that's to say that if you find yourself in a very severe, crazy, intense situation where you are not safe on any level of your person, don't try to do like self-help and improve it. Get legal help, get law enforcement help, do everything you need to do, okay? Going back, I just want to make that caveat. I feel like in the spiritual community and the religious community, sometimes we don't give enough importance to people having their basic needs safe, and it's really easy that when you're talking about 5D and spirit, you are separating from this in a little bit, and it can be really easy to give the wrong impression to people that the 3D experience is not important, or that we shouldn't be careful and loving and attentive and protective of our body and our personal experience, and that's not what I am saying. I want to be really clear about that. And that's why I think it's important for us to go through this process of talking about what can I fix and when is it not fixable, and then how do I remove myself from these situations that are beyond help sometimes. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so take care of yourself, be safe, take care of your children, do what you need to do. Self-defense, self-perseverance, self-worth, self-care, okay, self-love. So going back to situations that can still be possibly rectified, how do we improve on this spectrum? How do we improve that? Having an open heart, and again, you have to know your situation, you have to judge it rightly. Having an open heart can be a posture, so there's not necessarily any particular behaviors that go through that. We talked in the last video about coming heart to heart together. If you have somebody who you believe yourself to be truly safe with, then an open heart and demonstrating that and manifesting the relationship is going to be positive, because it's going to allow that person, if they're closed off or hostile, it's going to allow them to go, okay, I'm not under attack right now. It may take a while for them to pick up the new vibration, and depending if they pick up the new vibration, it may take various lengths of time, and that's part of how you know if it's time to walk away. If you're coming open-hearted, day after day, returning, repeating, coming back, really trying to make it work, not attacking, not being vicious, not being inappropriate or rude or disrespectful, and you're really trying to make it help, at some point, if this person is at any level of awakeness, they will sense that, and what you would expect to happen is for them to open back up to you and have a heart-to-heart connection. People who cannot or will not, sometimes we get stuck in our tapes from old behaviors, and it could be things that you have legitimately done in the past. So don't be afraid to go back and say, yeah, I'm sorry, I used to be this or do this, and I apologize. I need to take responsibility for that. I need to communicate that openly. And if you say that to them and then you follow through with actual changed experience and changed behavior, and they don't loosen up, that is, to me, one of the ways that you know it's time to leave the relationship. Because they're so stuck in their tapes and in their head that they're not really here with you, they're somewhere else. They're in their past, they're in their trauma, they're in their wounding, they're not emotionally available to interact with you in the here and now because they're in their head. So as you come to somebody and you're being open-hearted, and it's going to be hard work, it's going to be scary and vulnerable. I'm not saying that it's easy or fun per se all the time. At some point, this person should open back up to you. That's what we're going to expect and hope. You are in charge of what that looks like. I'm in my 40s. I've been divorced. I have children. I have a demanding job. When I'm in relationship with people, I'm not at a time in my life when I can give them a lot of time to come together with me. And it's important for me personally, this is my personal share, to have a relationship where the same investment, in aggregate over averages over time, is basically, it's an even relationship. Somebody is stuck in their wounding, if they're stuck in their past, if they're stuck in their trauma too much and they're not able to come through, I just take it as a sign that we're not a match for that time. And maybe after they have healed some, if they want to, pursue me and say, hey, I would really like to hook up again on whatever capacity, then we can have a conversation. So that's a conversation that you need to have with yourself. Right now, for me personally, that time is rather short. I do not have time to invest in failing relationships. I'm putting all of my time and attention into positive momentum, into manifesting, into growth, to taking care of my family and myself. There have been times in life when I have been able to give more time to somebody, maybe coach them through it, walk them through it, observe them, support them. And there's not a right or wrong, and there's no finite standards or guides around this. There's no guidelines. It's really what you feel like you want to do and what you can commit to do. And that's something that you have to decide. So in whatever period of time that you decide that you would like this person to do this, then that's how you know. And so at some point, vibrationally, again, if you're coming with an open heart, this person will come to you too with an open heart and be able to soften, relax, sense that you're not a threat, sense that you're being loving, sense that you're wanting to truly engage. And if they want to be with you, they will open back up. And again, that's not a judgment. Sometimes they don't want to be with you, and that's okay. If your self-worth doesn't come from somebody else, we have enough strength in our own being to say, I'm not for everybody. And really, we don't even want to be for everybody. Who wants 7 billion other people hounding them to talk on the phone and hang out and have dinner every night? We don't want like a massive collective, We want intimate relationships. We want those to be limited. And so if they go, oh, well, this is just not for me, you're not the person, we're not going in the same direction, we don't share the same values, we don't share the same vision, then it's like, great, you can have 2 open-hearted people that aren't compatible. And that's not a contradiction. It's not that, well, you're open-hearted, you should love me and accept me and be on the same page as me. People are diverse in every way that we can be diverse, and it's meant to be that way. And it's not a verdict on either party that we're both open-hearted and engaged and in our healing and in our abundance and in a really great loving energy, and then we're not meant for each other. That's okay. I think sometimes because we have tended as a society to place so much of our self-worth in other people, we've allowed that to be the verdict about our own personal self-worth. We feel like everybody should like me, love me all the time. There shouldn't be conflict. There shouldn't be differing of opinions. There shouldn't be people on different paths of different parts of their journey and their path. That's nonsense. The universe is big enough for us all. So, we can give people the space to say, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. We're both open-hearted. It's not a verdict about somebody's not doing it right, or you're closed down, you're traumatized, blah, blah, blah. All that to say, I'm really rambling today. We're going to call this the rambling hour because I just get on here and I just go. So if you're heart-to-heart with somebody, and again, I want to say there's no behavior. It's not like I'm going to say, oh, make his dinner and rub his feet every day for a month, and then you guys will be in love again. This is an energy because we're drawing from 5D. We're manifesting 5D. So it'll look different for every person in every different scenario. It'll look different for you on different days and times, and what that looks like depending on your own rhythms and what part of the month, what part of the week, what part of the paycheck cycle you find yourself in on that particular moment, it will look different. But if you're coming open-hearted, that will be the constant vibrational proposition that you're offering, and that will be unchanging. What that looks like may be different. And again, going back to the conflict, it doesn't mean that you're not calling people on their shit. Sometimes it gets worse before it gets better because we start speaking the truth. We start speaking our own truth. We start having, here's my expectations. And frankly, you're not meeting them. And if you want to stay in this relationship, these are the things that I need for me to continue to invest at this level. Otherwise, my investment is going to go down. I'm not willing to give up here when I'm perceiving as that you're giving right here. So it's not, what did my ex used to say, rainbows and unicorns or something, roses and unicorns on roses and rainbows. Sometimes it does get harder in that open-hearted posture, the open-hearted vibration, is even more important, because there can be difficult truths said. Because what are we doing? We're all coming from this. We're all at varying levels of trauma, woundedness, healing. And again, that's not a judgment. I believe we all come in whole, and yet somehow we really quickly begin to accumulate after the birth event all sorts of crap that we carry with us. So most people don't go to life like this. Most people are in some version of this kind of open-heartedness, closed-offness. So really, it's very rarely that you have truly this between two people. It's more often that you have varying degrees of being pinched off, closed off, fearful, withdrawing, shut down. And so as you begin to be more vulnerable, here, no, this is you. It's hard and it's scary. And sometimes to a person who's still like this, people being honest, people stating their truth, people talking about how they feel and what they see and what they want, can feel threatening. It can feel aggressive. It can feel scary for them. It can feel unsafe. Not because you're actually being unsafe, but because it's triggering for them whatever that trauma is, and they have to make an intentional decision to separate from their trauma storyline that they replay in their head, and they have to choose to come into the present moment and be in their body and be with you in that moment and address what's truly happening in that moment, not what's replaying for them. From a psychological, from a social perspective, that's why it's so difficult to have a successful long-term relationship that's healthy. You can be very codependent and very unhealthy very stably for a very long time. Most of the world has been built on such liaisons. But at this enlightened day and age, at this late time in history, we're wanting this. We're wanting something that's spiritually, emotionally genuine and real for ourselves and for the other people. I think it's a great spiritual evolution that we're not willing to allow people to go through like this, or again, to be attacking and to be suppressing them and holding them down. Here's my, kind of civil rights, human rights kind of speech, but we have a long way to go, no doubt. But I feel like the conscious collective is really trying to elevate and say, it doesn't benefit anybody to have winners and losers, and we only win when we all win. And so hopefully, this discourse will add to that. So, God, that's not really practical, and I'm really sorry. I feel like that is where your personal wisdom will step in. Your own intuition will come in. Most people have a sense of what is next for them to do. We usually know if we're suppressing our truth, if we're not speaking our needs, if we're not demanding what we're worth. And yes, I said demanding, and yes, I think that's okay. We need to set the precedent that this is the minimum, this is the middle, and this is the maximum. There is a minimum, and that's okay for us to say. I think most of us know what we could be falling short on our own self-advocacy and within relationships. And again, because we're talking about work and romantic and children and civic, it's so many dynamic things. Having an open heart will look different in all those scenarios. And I think it's dangerous to say, do these specific behaviors with people in a scenario that I'm really blind on. So that's where I'm going to trust you to have your intuition, your knowing. If somebody has it, I'm happy for you to send in a question to Ask 5D. You can get a reading, a tarot reading. But again, you can also see a therapist, ask your best friend, talk to people, get other professional help. So, and there's a lot of help out there. So if you want more help, go get it. It's out there. It's abundant. And when you may not even know what you're looking for. But if you say, okay, I really want this for myself, I would like to be in a certain kind of relationship, and you set that intention and you tell the universe, please show me how I can do that, move me towards that. Go out into the world and trust that it's coming to you, and you will meet up with it. For whatever reason, I go to bookstores or libraries, and it's like the right books just are, there's shelves and shelves and rows, and I'll just see this book and I go, oh my God, there it is. And this book, I'll have a life-changing experience with a book. Do the same thing with YouTube. Talk to people. Go to some agencies like mental health clinic, or if you get like pastoral care from a church or something, go start talking to people and say, where can I get resources for this? And go out to meet it. Don't sit at home alone with your phone off. Go out to meet it, but trust that you will find the right thing, and that as you begin to move the energy around, that it will come to you, and then you'll get that more specific information that you need for your own specific situation. Also, don't underestimate the power of a journal and a pen, or some colors and a sheet of paper. We have so much deep intuitive wisdom that we are not used to accessing. Our brains are magnificent. Our mind is just lit up and on fire, and we have spiritual wisdom, we have spiritual insight, we have deep knowing. Our bodies have knowing. You can go into your body and ask your body what it needs. Start listening to your body. It will tell you. And learning how to interpret those signs and signals from your body when you feel relaxed and open and free and loose. That's a good sign. If your stomach clenches up, or if you suddenly get headaches, or you're, clench your jaw, or your shoulders get tight in certain situations, or witnessing certain things, listen to your body telling you to go back to that free, relaxed, open state. And you can listen to your body. Again, get some journal. Ask a question and start writing. We just talked about Neil Donald Walsch doing the automatic writing. You can do non-dominant hand writing, where you ask a question and with your non-dominant hand you write out the answer. That's very powerful. I like to ask the same question and write with both hands, and then see how the answers are different. And they come from different places, and I feel the truth of both of them resonate with me as I'm reading it or writing it. But it's amazing. So there's maybe some practical skills after all that you can do for you that are cheap, easy, and free, and that at your disposal, and you can track. The great thing about the journaling is that I save them. I have every single one. I really don't know why, but you can go back as far as you want. But you can see how it changes. You can see what truths are there. Another thing that you can do, and this is something, you write out affirmations, write out contracts with yourself. Write out, I, Dory, now give myself permission to. Write out a check to yourself on a piece of paper. Write out a check, write out an invoice, write out a permission slip, write out a contract, write out an agreement between you and yourself, write out agreement between you and your guides, whoever that is, and get creative with it. Do what works for you, and when you come across it, you'll feel it. You'll feel this openness, and there'll just be this resounding ringing and rightness where you just feel it. There will be no doubt, because it'll be a knowing. So some of those things can be practical for you to begin to excavate from within yourself, your own deeper knowing in your body, in your spirit, in your mind. The mind gets a lot of bad press, and maybe rightly so. But your logical mind is a tool. If you can give it the creative question to answer it, it goes to work for you. So basically you give it a feeling or a storyline, and it will go to work for you to work that out. So if you go, ma'am, my spouse is such a jerk, it's going to go to work justifying that for you. If you say, my spouse is such a darling, and they're so helpful, and they're so loving, and I just love being with them so much, your mind will go to work to justify that out for you. So if you give it the right questions, it will give you the answers that take you there. It's great to have logic. It's great to have linear thinking. You need that. Don't diminish that within your greater knowing, but we can't only draw from that either, because it does not create, it doesn't have knowing, it just justifies and rationalizes. So it's like a computer. That knowing has to come from somewhere else. And if you know how to marry those two, then you can get a lot of leverage out of your working logical mind. Also your creative side of your brain as well. So let those two things work for you. So that's what I would say about improving your relationship. I don't have any specific tips. Again, be open-hearted. I really am a big proponent of moving energy around. And giving is a great way to do that. So going into like the quantum physics and the physics world, the math world, if you create a vacuum, that has to be filled. That's why like tithing or generosity and other like giving is so used so much as a tool for abundance, or for whatever else it is you want. When you give something away, that creates a hole, and that's a vacuum, and something has to come in to fill that. So within your relationships, give something, give anything, give as much as you comfortably can, as much as what's genuine for you. If this is resonating for you, you will already have ideas and know what I'm talking about for you. Like you're going to go, oh, that's what this is. So give. Can be notes, can be acts of all the love languages. So go do your love language research. What was it, Smalley? I don't know who wrote that book. I'm sorry, but it's love languages. It's all over. And do all the love languages. Just give from that open heart and give what feels good. Give what feels good for you to give. Don't give what you think the other person wants or needs. There's a big, huge difference. It's subtle. It's very subtle, but give what feels good to give. Okay. The giving should come from an open heart, and giving will be done freely, and you won't have an investment in the outcome when you're giving from an open heart. If we're giving to make somebody happy, or giving to meet their need, or giving to do a quid pro quo trade with them, then we're thinking of the outcome, and it's just a sale, which again is fine. Sometimes life works on the barter system, but to give, to open up the energy, you're still in a closed system. So it has to work by creating a vacuum, not by making a trade. Does that make sense? So if you're giving for an outcome, that's not the kind of giving I'm talking about. I'm not saying not do that. Sometimes that can be really helpful for people to communicate and say, when I do this, I need that. This is what I'm looking for. What can I give you back to make that easier? Sometimes those really simple communication, those really simple conversations can help a lot and really clear up some stuff. But give. And you don't have to, like, let's say you're having a hard time with your spouse. You don't have to give to the spouse. Give everywhere else around you if giving to your spouse right now is too hard. Like, let's just say, could be your boss or a child or a neighbor, like, friend. You're having a hard time relationship with this one person. You don't have to give to them. You can give anywhere else, everywhere else around you. It'll still work to pull more energy and more love into it. So, to borrow some Abraham Hicks, if you have a troubled relationship, you're going to have a lot of negative momentum around that, most likely. Giving to them may be too much right now. And so, especially as what tends to happen in troubled relationships, you feel starved off from that person. It's really hard to be the first one to give when you're feeling starved off from that person. If you can, great, go for it. Again, if you feel like you have intuition on what that action should be or could be for you, go for it. If it's too much, it's okay. Give yourself permission for that to not be how you want to give right now. Make it a goal to give. Anything, the grocery store clerk, your kids, the dog, the earth, go plant a tree, sit and meditate with the intention of just putting love back out into the universe. It can be as simple as you want it to be. Paint and hide the rocks that people like to do, leave a little smiley face somewhere for somebody. Anything will work, whatever gets your open-hearted energy moving. And that will also help relationships, I think. It will also bring in other resources for you. We tend to, especially in a troubled relationship, only fixate on that one person as being the answer to the relationship need. If you are focusing too much on that person because you feel that lack and you're chasing them and you're trying to get that need met from them specifically, you could be shutting yourself off from other modes of like emotional nourishment or financial nourishment or emotional relational nourishment that you truly need, but that can come from other people. And so when you broaden that social network and you utilize resources from other sources, that can make you as an individual more fulfilled, more well-rounded, more sustained, more nourished, and have more resources to give to everybody, specifically yourself. And so that also, moving that energy will also bring in more energy. And so again, it's not so much what you're doing, but it's moving the energy, being open to positive energy, really having those positive expectations, or going where you can be open, going where you have positive things happening. And I think we've talked a lot about when it's time to leave. And I feel like that is really different for everybody. And again, if you are looking at leaving a job, you're going to probably want, the prevailing wisdom is to get another job to replace it before you go. If you are leaving, like, let's say a marriage, for most people, there's financial concerns, possibly child concerns for if you have a family together. People might have pets or property together. If you have a relationship that doesn't have a lot of baggage like that, like a lot of friendships are not heavy in contractual legal obligations, You might have more freedom as to when and how you make that happen. But I feel like I have a better answer for this, but I'm really feeling like you will know when you go into yourself and look at, what am I worth? What am I looking for? What do I want this relationship to be? Those kinds of questions, those really self-searching questions about who you are and where you are right now and where you want to go. And when you take that to the other partner and have a really frank, honest discussion and say, I'm reevaluating our relationship. I'm reevaluating myself right now. This is what I want from it. This is what I'm willing to give. This is what I need back. How do you feel about that? Like, where are you at with that? Again, you may have to develop some open-heartedness between the two of you before you can have a hard conversation like that. It may take, weeks or months or days or something of like investing in the relationship to where you can really say, hey, let's sit down. But it's okay too to just say, look, I'm really on empty right now, and I don't have a lot of time for this to get fixed. I don't have a lot of emotional margin and emotional resources to really, pour into you and really, like, I need a decision. I need to know, like, I'm really on empty here. This isn't something that, I've already invested a lot. I've already done a lot. And if that's not working for you, and this relationship isn't working for you, then I want to know that too. Out of love, I would want you to be free to go where you are in a happy relationship as well. Generally, relationships don't fail because there's only one unhappy person. I know that sometimes people will say that. I don't know how much I believe that. In my situation, it's almost never been that there's only one unhappy person. I find that most times it's both people are like, yeah, this is really, this is not fun. And so that person may really, really welcome the conversation to say, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And, they may feel afraid. They may not feel that they have the resources to have that conversation at that period in time. And so, again, this is where, on a practical note, the words and the actions are going to want to match. I have been in situations with people who talk it up great, and then the follow-through is not there. And again, that could be because they don't want to, and they're just not willing to invest that much, but they don't know how to just be honest with you, or maybe honest with themselves and say that. Or it could be that they want to, but they truly do not have the skills at that point or enough healing to be able to follow through on what their real intention really is, of just to be loving, to be present in the relationship. And so, again, that'll be a decision that you have to make for you about how much discrepancy between words and actions are you willing to tolerate, or can you tolerate, or what's the ideal that you're looking for, and then to present that to them, and for yourself to be able to know, this is what this is. And I think that especially if you have more long-term relationships, you have a career that you've really invested in, if you have a marriage with kids, if you have a really long-standing relationship, sometimes it can take a couple cycles of evolution and growth or self-reflection and healing for people. Like for me with my marriage, it took some processing to go, okay, what really is deal breakers for me? What can I live with? What can't I not? And that's okay. Everybody, it takes what it takes for us to come to these conclusions. And for me personally, I feel like there's a lot of value in the process of the self-discovery, asking the questions, the self-examination, and more than what comes out of the relationship. The relationship is really a tool for me to be able to develop and to grow and to demonstrate love to myself and my own relationship with myself, my own relationship with Source and my own inner being. And so really, so really the relationship is a backdrop to my own healing journey. And as I heal, I care less about relationships in some ways. I don't demand that they meet my needs in the same ways. I care more because I care more about the other person being happy and having a good fit. I didn't used to be concerned about that. I used to be much more concerned about people pleasing and making sure that I had my needs met, and that I was being affirmed or, assigned value, or that I felt a certain way. And as I have grown, again, with the prompting of those very relationships, a lot of those things have changed for me. So, for most people, if you're really in a situation that has you gridlocked, you probably have a fair amount of personal healing that you are uncovering for yourself. You're uncovering your wholeness, you're uncovering your worth, you're uncovering the love for yourself and those practices of self-love for yourself. And so it may take some time for you to navigate this journey. It's not like, oh, I just decided to get a divorce one day. You know, you can expect, and I think rightly so, that there's going to be a time and like a season of really examining and going back and forth. And that should be expected. That shouldn't be condemned or think, oh, well, I'm not really making progress, or I'm not really doing this right because now I'm with him and now I'm not. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm doing that. If you have a marriage or a long-going, family relationship, it can be a process where you're doing an involvement. You are evolving, an evolvement. You're doing an evolvement concurrently. You're in yourself along with the relationship that you're attempting to be a part of or separate from or be in or improve, whatever the case is on that day. Yeah, so I think that's it. And again, this was super broad, so if anybody has more specific situations about work or relationship or something specific, or definitely send those in, and I'll be happy to give it another go. It's a big topic, and a lot of people have this. I think we have all gone through this over and over and over again in our lives. So, yeah, and I think that it's some of the hardest work. When we're dealing with spouses, we're dealing with family of origin issues. That is the hardest work, and I find that as we go and we move into that shadow area, for a lot of us, this is shadow area. As we move into that work, this is it. Once you can address these issues, these core issues, you're now going out of the forest. You can only go halfway into the forest. After that, you're coming out of the forest, and you're going to be a transformed new person. And so I want to encourage anybody in the hard work of relationships, self-discovery, healing, confronting people, working through conflict, asking for what they're worth. I want to encourage you and affirm you that this is basically as hard as it gets, and if you can go and do this, everything else is going to be cake. And you will notice that as you confront these relationships, a lot of other difficult peripheral situations that you find yourself in are going to be either automatically resolved or much easier for you to navigate as you come more into your power, more into your self-love. And it's vibrational, and that's what the great benefit of doing vibrational work is that it goes everywhere. If I'm in 3D and I only work on one aspect of myself, only that aspect is going to get better. But vibrationally, if I do the work at a 5D level, it's encompassing of my entire being and my entire life. And that's why I really like to work from the 5D in things like healing, interpersonal relationships, what have you, because it has so much leverage, so much bang for the buck. You do the work once and then you have benefits everywhere, versus just investment here and then you only have growth here in this one area. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope this was helpful, and continue to send those questions in. And I'm Shadow Phoenix Dory signing off. Have a good one.